One of my favorite things in the world to do is watch Friends. I know it's been off for years and years. It's not even around, but I still find myself binge watching old episodes. And I was thinking about this today and thinking, it's the predictability of the friends in the circle, right? You have Chandler with his quirkiness, Monica with her type A of just everything has to be so neat and tidy and organized. It's Phoebe's ability to make you laugh at her silly songs. Ross always comes in with those smart comments, and Joey and him and his food, like it is just so hilarious. And of course, Rachel, she just brings everybody together, and it's just such this beautiful, cohesive team of people. And it's why I wanted to come on and share with you today that I have an opportunity for you to find your friends in the content creation space. So if you are thinking about creating your first or your next digital course, I don't want you to miss this opportunity because Amy Porterfield just opened the doors for registration for her Course Confident Bootcamp. And I'm actually offering a special bonus for anyone that registers for the Course Confident Bootcamp through my special link. So I want you to go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register. That's crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And what you're going to find when you get there is I have this special bonus private podcast series. It's called Money Mindset for Creators. So I want you to go register for Amy's Bootcamp, download the podcast, and immediately start listening to it, because what this training is set up to do is to help you get your mind right about monetizing your content, making money so that you can fuel your content creation dreams. So go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp to register for Course Confident. And I cannot wait for you to find your friends and find the people that will be there for you. Do you see what I did there? Yeah, nice little friends segue connection. Go to crystalprofit.com/Amy-bootcamp. And I cannot wait to see you inside. Okay, let's get into today's episode. Have you been wanting to start a podcast? You've been thinking about it. It feels right. You just know this is the next thing that my business needs. Well, I encourage you to sign up for my 5-day podcast bootcamp. This is a thing that you have been looking for. It is a 5-day video series where I walk you through exactly how to start, launch, and market your podcast. And I throw in some more information about planning strategies and being consistent and how you can make the most out of your podcast from day one. So sign up for our 5-day Create Your Podcast Bootcamp at crystalprofit.com/podcast bootcamp. And do it already. You know that you've been wanting to, so just bite the bullet and join us. So I'm really excited about today's episode. And I feel like I say that every single time. And then I feel like I point out that I say that every single time. So maybe it has no relevance anymore, but it's the truth. Like, I'm excited to talk about today's episode because I want to see you getting the most mileage that you can out of your podcast. If you're taking all the time to plan your content, maybe you're planning your outline, you're planning your script, like however you are doing your episodes, I want to make sure that you're not just putting it out there. I mean, like, well, I spent so long creating that, but it's just kind of there. You know, I hope people will go back and listen to it later. I want you to actually get as much mileage out of your podcast as you can. So today I want to talk about 3 ways that you can repurpose your podcast audio once it's transcribed into text. So let's get right to it. Welcome to the Profit Podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. I'm your host, Crystal Profit, and I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Because if you've been thinking about creating a podcast for a while, well, I'm so glad you found this show. Think of this as the shortcut / time-saving version of searching Google and YouTube for hours and hours trying to figure out the world of podcasting. Trust me, as a busy mama of 3, I get it. You don't have a lot of time to be spent or wasted, I should say, searching the web, trying to find all the right ideas and all the amazing things that are out there, and you just end up overwhelmed. Trust me, I've been there, done that, took home the souvenir. But this podcast is going to help you in practical ways because twice a week we'll be delivering episodes that are going to give you steps to help you create a podcast your audience can't wait to listen to. So let's get right to it, shall we? Okay, before we dive into all the nitty-gritty of everything that we're going to talk about today, I wanted to tell you that I have a ton of YouTube videos about repurposing content, how you do it, what tools to use, and all the things. That's actually where I got the idea for today's episode. So if you go to crystalprofit.com/episode 131, that is the show notes for this episode, and you'll find links to all the YouTube videos that are related to repurposing content. But also you'll find a link to the actual YouTube channel there so you can go check out all the other cool videos that we've been putting out over the last few months. And YouTube's been a lot of fun, guys. Like, I'm looking forward to sharing more about how I repurpose podcast content for video, like, and which way, like how I plan my podcast content around how well a video performs and how I plan video content around how well a podcast performs and like all the things. So I'm planning on doing some things about that. Let me know what you think. Send me a message on social media, send me an email. If you're part of my email newsletter, then just hit reply to my weekly emails. I send out every Friday, and let me know what you think. But today I want to talk specifically about 3 ways that you can repurpose your podcast audio for text. But hang on. I just remembered. I promised that I'm going to start doing more of the listener shout outs. And today I want to share a review that was left on Apple Podcast by Angie TB. And she says, such a valuable show. Crystal offers a wealth of knowledge on creating and growing a podcast. What a valuable resource for folks thinking about launching a show or host that have had a podcast for years. Thank you so much, Angie. I love that you found so much value, and I love that she pointed out that this podcast is not just for beginners and it's not just for seasoned podcasters. I love that she said, like, there's value to be had no matter where you are in this journey. So thank you so much, Angie, for your awesome review. I truly appreciate it. So if you haven't left a review, I would encourage you to leave one wherever you are listening to this podcast, and I would love to read your review on the Profit Podcast. Okay, so now we are going to get back to repurposing content. So I want to talk about the 3 ways that you can repurpose your podcast audio to text. And like I said, I'm going to link in the show notes. crystalprofit.com/episode 131 is where you're going to find all these videos and the resources. But the transcription service that I have used, there are a lot of them out there, but I only like to talk about platforms and services and programs that I have personally used. And the one that I have tried and I've liked a lot is otter.ai. So OTTER.ai. It's going to be linked in the show notes. But they recently changed their plan. So I don't want to say that it's all 100% free. I think that like you get so many free minutes a month, but then you can only export your files like in a certain way. So if that makes any sense. If you are a YouTuber and you use transcriptions, but you want the SRT file, that's where they do the timestamp. So if you do transcriptions for YouTube, if you want to export that way, I think that they charge you now. I'm pretty sure that like a lot of YouTubers caught on to, oh, look, we can go do it free on this site. So now they charge for you to do that. But I think if you want just a basic text document or a PDF, it's still free up to so many minutes per month. That could totally change if you're listening to this 6 months from the air date. That happens all the time where I'll endorse a free program or platform that I love so much. And then, a month later, they're charging for it. So that's the one that I know. And that's the one that I'm going to endorse right now as of today, as of me recording this episode. But things can change. So just know that ahead of time. But I will link to otter.ai in the show notes. I love the ease of how it's just super simple to upload your audio file, and then a few minutes later they notify you and it's like, oh, here's your transcription. And it's not 100% perfect, but oh my gosh, it's so much better than anything else, like having to transcribe it. And I know that there's other people that endorse other platforms, but this is the one that I've used. It's tried and true. I still use it from time to time. And it is actually something that helped me transcribe a lot of the audio and video files that I'm actually using in my book. So if you want to know more about my podcast book, then I encourage you to go to thebestpodcastbook.com, and it'll show you how you can join our launch team. I'm sharing everything, but this actually does have to do with this episode because I transcribed a lot of stuff for my book, guys. Like, I didn't write every single thing from scratch. I repurposed some stuff. Like, I tweaked it and I made it better, and I made it look all fancy or whatever. I'm formatting it. It's going to be different, but I did not use all brand new ideas for the podcast book. I repurposed content and added a bunch of stories to it and made it more personal. But yeah, that's one of the resources that I used. I used otter.ai to transcribe a lot of my information. Okay, so I feel like we've gone on a few rabbit holes already. We are going to get to the things we're talking about today. Okay, so number 1,
being a woman in business comes with its own unique set of challenges, but also so many opportunities. We get ahead by leaning in to what makes us different from business as usual. I'm Samantha Hartley, host of Profitable Joyful Consulting, inviting you to a special 6-episode series exploring the experience of being a woman in business. You want to hear from women consultants who've hit $1 million, who sell 6-figure engagements, or who've broken their own revenue ceilings? Yeah, those are my clients, and they'll be sharing too. Join me for 6 must-listen episodes that tackle key challenges for women consultants.
Follow Profitable Joyful Consulting on your favorite podcast app.
how you can repurpose your podcast audio to text, use it for a blog post. I love this because it's so simple, it's so straightforward, and it is so dang easy if you use a transcription service. I'm sure there's even more free ones that I don't know about, but I started with Otter when I didn't pay for it whenever I first started using it. And I think it's such a great idea. Why not get the most mileage you can out of your audio by turning it into a text that you can use for a blog post? Now, I know that some people will take blog posts and use them as their show notes, but they literally just take a transcription of the audio, slap it up on a website. They call it their show notes, but it's really just a transcription of the audio, and it's not formatted. It does not look cute. Please do not do this. Okay, please, please, please do not do this, because I can't think of a single time where I've ever been like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait. I'm going to run and not walk to this website to look at a transcription. No, that does not excite anybody. It might be good for your SEO, but in the long run, people, they don't get excited about that, especially if it's not formatted. Oh my gosh, no, don't do it. Just don't even do it. I've seen it. I've seen it done really badly where people, they think oh, well, people want to read the whole conversation. And maybe there are people out there that do. Maybe they just want to see timestamps. And this is when this person was talking. This is when, but to me, I would rather listen to the audio file and then read something that is way better formatted for me to either skim through it and be look at a glance, is this something I actually want to read? You know how you're scrolling through. Like if you just see a web page, you land on this web page and all of a sudden it's just a ton of words, like your brain kind of goes into this like, it's just, like information overload. What am I even looking at right now? I can't even process it because it's just so much stuff, just like right in my face. I don't even know what this is. But if you have it where you've taken this transcription of your audio and you're turning it into a blog post, you're formatting it with titles and maybe some bullet points, and maybe you're bolding things, and maybe you're just making it easier for your audience to read. Yeah, I would go read that. I would go check that out, especially if you're giving like tips or something. Like, let's say for this podcast, I could have in my show notes, and I probably will, it'll say 3 ways to repurpose your podcast audio content. And I'll have number 1, blogs. Number 2, we'll get to that in a second. Number 3, we'll get to that one in a second. You know what I'm saying? Like I would read that, and I would probably actually go back to that in the future if I remember like, oh yeah, she had a great post on her site. I'm going to go back and find that because it was super helpful, or I'm going to share it with somebody else. But if I land on your site and it's just transcription, I have, number 1, no desire to read that. Number 2, I'm definitely not going to share it. And number 3, I'm sure as heck not going to go back. Okay? Like that is just the harsh reality. And maybe that's just my opinion. Maybe somebody else feels different, but that is how I am as a consumer of reading blog posts and checking things out. If it's not very clear, it's just a jumble of words, and ain't nobody got time for that. I'm not going to read it. Not going to happen. But that is one way to repurpose your podcast audio whenever it is in text format. The second way is for your social media. Now, we could totally go down 50 different directions of how you can use your podcast audio on social media, but we are just talking about as it relates your audio transcribed to text format. So you could put up, and I'm a huge fan of Canva. I've mentioned Canva on here a million times, and I hope even if you're listening to this in the future that it's still 100% free. I mean, that is like the biggest appeal to me. So I haven't spent a lot of money on, actually, I've never spent any money on Canva. I know you can buy stuff and do all these cool things, and I have tons of friends who use their paid versions, but I love the fact that it's so simple to use and everything about it. But I have not ever paid for Canva. Maybe they're going that way. Maybe I shouldn't even say that out into the universe. All y'all are like, shut up, Crystal. We don't want them to charge anything, but I'm just saying it's a reality. It is a reality of what could happen one day, and I'm just calling it what it is, okay? But I love when people that have podcasts put out quotes that are from a specific episode. So I could see this taking a lot of time, but if you have a podcast, you put it out, you transcribe it, and then you put out like snippets, like little takeaways, whether it's like the top 3 takeaways from an episode, or it's just a really good quote. Like I don't think I've ever really quoted myself other than like to my kids, like, did you hear what I said? And I repeat myself, but I don't really have a tendency to quote myself. But I think that would be something that would be pretty cool if you have a really awesome quote that you say within a podcast episode and you're like, man, I'm going to put that out on social media. That's going to be my teaser content, or that's going to be what I use to draw potential listeners in. But I think that taking little snippets of the audio, turning it into text format is a really cool thing that you can do. And I've also seen where people will break like one episode, because I've had people ask me like, well, Crystal, I only put an episode out once a week. I don't know what to talk about on social media. And I'm like, no. You don't have that excuse anymore. You could take like 6 sentences out of your podcast episode, put those on a graphic, and boom, you have 6 social media posts. So you can have a post the day that the podcast airs, and then you could put out 6 following posts. You know, it's like, oh, this is, remember we talked about this one point. Remember we talked about this point. Remember we talked about this one. Like, you don't have an excuse to post on social media, okay? There's always something to talk about when it comes to your podcast. You just have to decide if that's the route that you want to go. I know I'm specifically thinking about Instagram right now as it relates to text. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, you shouldn't do a lot of text. It should be more faces and it should be this and it should be that. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as long as your audience is engaging with it. If your audience loves for you to put out quotes of your podcast episodes, then do that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you you shouldn't do that because I'm not an Instagram expert and I'm not a social media expert. Okay, I'm a podcast expert. This is what I talk about. I talk about podcasting until I'm literally blue in the face. And I just think that you should do whatever your audience is going to respond to. So that's my 2 cents on using your podcast audio once it's transcribed to text to use it out on social media. And you can actually use, like if you didn't want to do like a text graphic to share on social, either Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever, you could take an image of you and then underneath you could take a snippet of your like transcription file and put it there as well. So you're not like coming up with this copy, you're like copywriting is like, oh, it drives me nuts. Well, take something that you said out of the transcription and put it as the content, the caption for your social media. So that's something to consider. I know a lot of you are like, Crystal, I don't have time for this. I don't have someone working for me. Like this would be an amazing thing that a content social media person could do for me, but I don't have time for that. That's great. That's fantastic. I don't have time to do all this either. I'm just sharing with you ideas. Okay. This is my gifting. I have the gift of ideas and I like to share with other people the things that I think could help them. And this is one of them. If you are struggling to get traction on social media and you have no idea what to post, this is a great place to start because it literally doesn't cost anything and it doesn't take anything but time. A little time and a little effort can go a long way, especially when it's intentional and you're using it to add value to your audience. Okay, so let's talk about the third thing. The third way that you can repurpose your podcast audio for paid content. That's what we're going to talk about. Paid content is number 3. And this, oh my gosh, I could go, see guys, with the ideas, I could talk about how you could use your audio for paid content in a text format in multiple different ways. But I already kind of talked about it earlier. I'm creating a book, right? I wrote a book. It is How to Start a Podcast Your Audience Will Crave. I think that's the first time I've ever actually said the title on this podcast. So that feels right. It feels real. It feels a little scary, but I'm here for it. I'm excited. It's going to happen. But I used my podcast and I used parts of previous speaking engagements and parts of my course and different video files and episode. Like I've used so many things to create this book and it's going to be paid for. It's not going to be expensive. It's not like I'm selling it for $500, guys. It's probably going to be like between $10 and $15 for this book, right? It's not like it's a gold mine that I'm sitting on, but it's paid content. It's me taking my podcast and other pieces of content and repurposing it into a text format. So you could do that, or you could just actually leave it. This is totally separate because we were talking about audio to text, but you don't even have to repurpose it. You could just use your audio files and turn that into a paid content. I mean, I know people with membership sites where they deliver audio that you can't get anywhere else. Like you have to be a member in order to get these bonus episodes or bonus audio files or whatever they may be. But I mean, there's so many different aspects that you could use of your podcast to like use it for paid content. But as it relates to paid content for audio to text, you could do an ebook, you could do a physical book, you could do a course, like course material, like course assignments or course, if you have a digital course or you're thinking about creating a digital course, a lot of times, because I have one and I'm part of different programs where people create digital courses, people will say, well, I don't, what am I supposed to do for the assignments? Or what am I supposed to do for the course material? Or what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, man, if you've got a podcast, like that is a gold mine because that is a lot of stuff that you don't have to start from scratch. You're not starting from ground zero. You are starting from wherever you are on your podcast. You are probably already miles ahead of someone who's sitting there saying, oh, I want to do this one day, but where do I start? You actually already have content at your fingertips. You just have to translate it into a different format in order to deliver it in a way that people either want to pay for it or they want to consume it. Like I've totally accepted the fact that everyone learns in different ways, and I'm really trying to understand how to reach my audience. Like you listening right now, I'm trying to understand how I can serve you in multiple different ways. Like here on the podcast, I can talk to you like we're sitting around having coffee, we're just chatting. When I do stuff on the YouTube channel, I'm actually physically showing you a lot of things, or I'm doing like a screen grab and I'm sharing my screen with you, or I'm showing you my microphone and the settings, or I'm just like giving you a motivational pep talk where you see my face. But everyone learns in these different ways, and I buy books, whether they're audio or they're physical copies or they're ebooks. Like there's just so many different things that you can do with your content. And so I want you to keep your mind open to that. Keep it open to the fact that it doesn't just have to be audio and doesn't just have to be video or doesn't just have to be anything. It can be a mixture of them, because that is how you can build a sustainable business and a sustainable platform, is whenever you're able to spread it out over multiple different places, multiple different areas, because you're hitting people on all the different elements of how they learn and how they consume content. But that feels like the perfect way to end this episode. So let me know. I'm sitting here laughing at myself because I'm just like, Crystal, you literally could talk and talk and talk about all this, and maybe some people stopped listening like 5 minutes ago and they're just like, I love Amy Porterfield and her saying, if you're multitasking, come back to me. And that just it doesn't feel right for me to say that, but that's like how I just felt. Like, I'm like, did I just space out? Did everybody space out there? Or like, cause I totally geek out on all this stuff when it comes to repurposing content, using the existing content that you have for paid content. And I think that we have a new idea that I'm going to be using in the next few weeks about repurposing your free content for paid content. And that feels right. That feels like that's going to be a fun episode. So watch out for that coming up. But remember, you can go to crystalprofit.com/episode 131 to get all the links to everything that we talked about here today. Make sure that you sign up for the free podcast bootcamp if you have not already done so. And remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Hey, Profit Podcast listeners. Thanks for sticking around to a little bit after the episode to hear this special message, because I want to hear from you. We are starting a new segment called Fan Mail Shoutouts, and I want to hear from you, and I want to hear your questions. What do you want to know? What questions have you been dying to ask me? So here's how to make this happen. Go to the app where you're listening to this podcast right now. Go there. I'll wait a second. Okay. Now, once you're there, you're going to see a hyperlink at the top of the episode description that says, send Crystal a text message. And that's all I want you to do. Send me a text. It could be casual, informal. It could be totally anonymous. Or if you want, you can include your name and the name of your podcast or content wherever you are creating, and I will give you a special shout out in an upcoming episode. So again, go to the show notes for where you're listening to this episode right now, and it will say, send Crystal a text message. And I cannot wait to hear from you and give you a shout out in an upcoming segment of Fan Mail Shoutouts.